Reading from Genesis chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as the people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower with which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they will propose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they might not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off the building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth.
It's good to be with you this morning. Hope everybody is doing well. As was said earlier, very thankful for the visitors who are with us. We're going to be at 3 different texts this morning. So if you've got your Bibles out and you're ready to follow along, we'll start there in Genesis chapter 11. We've been talking about the mission that God has given us, and that's our focus of this year. But now we're shifting into a new study, thinking about different topics that are very relevant, hopefully, to all of our lives. As we are given the mission of the people around us to go and to seek them out, to bring them into the church and to help them understand the blessings that God is offering to all those who submit to Him, it's important for us to understand a lot of these kinds of topics and what the Bible specifically says about these different ideas. If you want to learn about social media, you just open up Second Opinions, and you look at chapter 5, verse 3, and you find a very detailed description of all the things that you're supposed to do on social media. Except that's not there, right? There's no book for that. So we need to learn how to use our Bibles and what's in there to accomplish the different things that are going on in our lives. So we're not going to be looking at Second Opinions. It's not a book, in case you're completely lost right now. But we are going to be looking at some very important stories to help us understand these various topics. The first of which being social media and the digital age that we're now in. We live in a very digital age. Everything is digital, and there's a lot of things that we do online now. And so how are we supposed to address the online world that's around us? Like reality and virtuality are kind of mixing together. How are we supposed to handle that? And where does the Bible teach us how to deal with all the issues that are coming up as we deal with that? Really, ultimately, as we look at the Bible, we find a lot of the same kinds of problems are had throughout history. The only difference is now it's just those problems are much more prevalent and much more easily accessed for all of us. And so it's really important for us to understand these problems and these issues that have come up that are bombarding us constantly. And it's important for us to understand how to deal with all of these issues. We're going to be looking at 3 different stories today that hopefully help us with that and make sure that we stay on the right track. There's no question that social media is having an impact on us. A few weeks ago, I read something about 33 of our states, maybe more now, filing lawsuits against Meta or Facebook, saying that they have knowingly harmed people or allowed people to be harmed by what they're doing, and they have chosen to pursue that for profit. And so all these different lawsuits are now coming out. But we know that, right? I mean, we know that there is a lot of issues with our social media and with the internet in general. We know that people are using that to grab all the attention that they can grab, and they don't really care about how it's negatively impacting our lives, our mental health, and the things that we're going through. And they don't care about how this is causing these issues in our lives that we're going to look at today to be more prevalent. And so if they don't care, well, we need to care. And we need to pay close attention to the impact that these things are having. The first story that we're going to look at is Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9, which Keith just read to us. It's the story of the Tower of Babel, and maybe you've read this story before, but hopefully it's going to help you to think about the relationship between this story and what we go through today. If you remember in this story, humanity is united, and that's a wonderful thing, right? Humanity is united for a singular mission that never happens ever in the history of mankind. So this is like the one instance when mankind decided we're going to get our act together and we're going to unite and we're going to accomplish something that no one else has ever accomplished. But the goal is to make a name for themselves. What a letdown, right? They're so united, they're so together, everything's working great. But the mission is, let's make a name for ourselves. Let's build this wonderful monument to ourselves. As we're navigating life, it can be very easy for us to do very similar things to what they're doing here. To have this kind of self-focus and this pride that is on display as you read through this story. A desire to be known, a desire to have a reputation, a desire to be famous, so to speak, so that everyone knows who you are and what you have accomplished. And as we read this story, if you read it in line with other parts of Genesis, we see that this is a direct challenge to God's command, to go out and to fill the earth. And that is not what they're doing. They're saying, let's not go out, let's not fill the earth, but let's assimilate and let's join together to accomplish this great feat, to make ourselves known in all of time. And that is the opposite of what God really wants us to do. Well, whenever we parallel this with social media, we can see how social media can become a platform for us to make a name for ourselves. That's what a lot of people fall into the trap of. I think maybe everybody at some level, maybe all different levels, aspire to being well known, having some kind of a notoriety among our peers, and to stand out and to stand above everyone else and to be the greatest, so to speak. We see that in the disciples throughout the New Testament doing that in different ways, but here is a very clear example. And it's interesting as we think about our social media as us trying to accumulate the perfect picture, the ideal picture of ourselves, and to project that to other people, that is not what we're called to do. That is not in line with the mission that God has given us. The mission that God has given us is to be image bearers of Him, to be image bearers of Christ, to represent Christ, to make the name of God, the name of Christ, significant in the eyes of the people around us. And so it's this very, inconspicuous thing that has happened as we've all developed these Facebook profiles and Instagram profiles and all these different social media outlets. We those of us who have engaged in that have kind of created a tower, so to speak, to ourselves, maybe knowingly or unknowingly. And we need to be aware of that pitfall, of that danger that we could fall into in that way. And as we're browsing through social media, it can be very easy for us to compare our lives with the people around us. And to maybe feel as though we need to do more to make ourselves more known, to make ourselves better in the sight of other people. We have a lot of comparison that we do, a validation seeking as we create the perfect post and the perfect image of ourselves and our lives. This is a danger that we can fall into. As we're navigating through life, as we're navigating through the digital things that we have going on in our lives, we just need to be aware of this, that this is something we can fall into. Maybe you're not so likely to do this as someone else, but this is something that we could very easily do. Does it really matter that we're thought much of by people that we maybe don't know? people that we maybe don't like, people that we will maybe never see again for the rest of our lives? Is that really going to be an important thing that we're going to devote ourselves to? We need to think about that and consider that as we're engaging in social media. The second story, we're going to move on through these. Second story is in 1 Samuel chapter 15. And this is a story of another failure of Saul, the king Saul. God had spoke to Saul through Samuel, giving him a mission to go and to destroy the Amalekites along with all of their animals. The Amalekites were a very wicked people who preyed on the Israelites as they were leaving Egypt. And they came up behind them and got all the scragglers, and they killed them, and they tried to steal from them and made themselves a perpetual enemy of God's people. And so Saul was commanded to go and destroy every single Amalekite that has ever existed. And he says, don't take any of their animals either. Kill all of them too. But if you know the story, Saul doesn't listen. Instead of killing all the animals, he allows the best of the animals to survive, and he gives those to the people, and he takes the king, Agag, for himself to be his trophy. And when Samuel comes to Saul and he talks to Saul about the missteps, Saul has a very important quote. I feared the people and obeyed their voice. I feared the people and obeyed their voice. You see, Saul chose human approval over obedience. That was his focus in his life. He desired for the people to like him, for the people to approve of him, for the people to accept him. And he desired that more than doing the very things that God had commanded him to do. Well, do you see any kind of parallel there with our lives and our social media accounts and the internet in general, that the bombardment with information? We're in the information age. We understand the expectations of the people much better than we ever have. And we're being drawn into a desire for acceptance among the people who are all around us, as we're constantly being shown. This is the way we're supposed to think. This is the way we're supposed to feel. This is what we're supposed to pursue in life. And so we have FOMO. We have fear of missing out on all these things that the world tells us we're supposed to be doing. The world says you're supposed to take the king, Agag, back home with you, and you're supposed to cut off all his fingers, and you're supposed to make him like a dog who eats the scraps of your table. That's what the world tells you. And that's what Saul said. Hey, that sounds pretty good. I got me a trophy king. Let's go conquer another. I can have a bunch of dogs around my table. You see, the world has filled him with false narrative. And he has bought into it so much so that he's willing to just overlook what God really wanted him to do. And we can do the same things. God has told us how to live, who to be, what to care about, how to act, how to behave, how to feel, how to think, how to love, how not to do, how not to act, how not to feel, how not to hate. He's taught us all these things. But the world around us is constantly urging us to disobey. We have influencers. That's what they're called. And they have influence over the people. We see a personality that we love and we enjoy and we appreciate, and they say something that goes contradictory to what God's word says, and we maybe don't fully buy in the moment, but it starts to wear away at our convictions and our resolve. We see trends that pop up. We hear all these opinions from all these people, and some of them are on the left and some of them are on the right, and they're all over the place on their political alignment, but they are not where God is. They are not focused on the will of God. Instead, they have their own desires and their own agendas. And if we're not careful, we can align ourselves with them while at the same time rejecting the commands and the will of God. And over time, our desires and our hearts can go astray. So that whenever we're asked, aren't you supposed to love people? We say, oh, well, I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Aren't you supposed to not do this or act this way? Well, I feared the people and I obeyed their voice. I did what the people who I wanted appreciation from encouraged me to do. And you see that Saul lost the kingdom as a result. We need to be aware of this. This is a danger that we have as we look at social media. News outlets and news articles have such biases. Influencers are constantly influencing and teaching us how to live and how to act and how to be. And they might dash in a little bit of Bible and I believe and I'm a Christian and then say a bunch of things that are opposed to the Word of God. And we need to be aware of this. We need to not be giving ourselves over to the opinions of these people who perhaps are not following the will of God as they should. So we got to be careful not to focus on others, not to seek their approval, and not to just be convinced because we like their personalities. They can be as false as anybody, and we need to be aware of that. False teaching is able to run rampant in the information age. Thirdly, I want to look at one more story, and this is in 1 Kings chapter 11, and this is about the failure of King Solomon. Solomon's such an interesting story. And such a sad story, right? I mean, here's a guy who built the temple for God. A guy who God gave him wisdom because he asked for wisdom. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for power. He asked for wisdom. And God gave him wisdom. And God gave him money. And God gave him power. He gave him everything. And he was able to operate the kingdom in such a way that they were able to build a magnificent temple in honor of God. And afterward, in chapter 8, we read about him praying to God, and it's a wonderful prayer, and God responds to his prayer, and he is focused, he is navigating his life toward God as he should. But the people around him influenced him. He had wives. He had lots of wives. And he liked to make those wives happy. And he decided, instead of continuing to seek after God, to devote his life to all kinds of projects, again, to boast his name. He decided to devote his life to accruing much wealth and popularity. And he decided to devote his life to making his wives happy by building them altars to worship their gods. It's an interesting quote in this text as well. It tells us that his heart was not wholly true to the Lord. His heart was not wholly true to the Lord. Another quote right after that says, he did not wholly follow the Lord. You know, as you read that text and you read those quotes, that's a little bit concerning, isn't it? I mean, here's somebody who has at one time been devoted to God and pleasing God and seeking God, and God was his focus in his life. And then over the time, as his life went really, really well, he allowed other things to be more important than God. He allowed other things to just start creeping in and to become his main focus in life. The material world and the people in it became his focus rather than obeying and submitting to the will of God. Think about how you interact with social media. Think about how you scroll and you see all the lives of the people around you and the way that they're living their lives and the things that they possess as they put that shiny new vehicle on there and they put the big house and they put all these wonderful accomplishments in their lives and all these wonderful things. Think about all the ads that are now popping up. You ever noticed them? It's funny how I've noticed as I'm scrolling through Facebook or something like that, I'll be scrolling so fast and I'm like, what am I looking at? And it's like, okay, I got to slow down. Oh, that's an ad. Oh, that's sponsored. Oh, that's somebody who's paid to get my attention because they want me to buy their products. And it's like, I'm just filling my mind with a lot of advertisements, maybe just for a brief moment, but I'm getting that information in my mind. And it's creating in me a little bit of desire, a little bit of discontentment, a little bit of unhappiness about not having the things that I truly desire. And it listens to me, and it knows the things that I tell Jenna, I need to get one of those one day, and it'll show me every which one of those, right? It's just feeding us a desire for this world. And just like Solomon was bombarded with these wives and all of their influences and all of the things that they desire and that they think that should be done, we also are being bombarded. We're being fed and shown this endless showcase. And all those influencers that we love, well, it's so interesting to listen to their ads because they make it funny and interesting. And if they like it, well, then I have to have it, right? Well, it's creating for us all these different high places. All these things that we need that we don't really need. And we're filling our houses with all this stuff, and then we have to go and declutter them because they're just full of this stuff that we bought and we never use. We knew we'd need it. We knew we'd use it every day, and it maybe wasn't even opened. Or it was opened and we saw it wasn't what we thought it should be, and we just put it away. Holding on to it because we bought it with our money, but we really don't need it. So social media is really impacting our lives in ways that we may not recognize, ways that we don't really understand. But as we look at these stories, the story of the Tower of Babel, we look at the story of Saul and his being influenced by all these people to disobey God, and also Solomon being influenced by these people to not only disobey God, but to just pursue more and more and more in his life, and to allow these things to completely take his heart away from God. It wasn't wholly devoted to the Lord. He instead chose the world and the Lord, and you can't serve two masters, Jesus says. So he failed in that. We see some very important warnings for us, things for us to be aware of as we're scrolling through social media. I'm not telling you never look at another social media app. There is usefulness, there is good that can be found in the social media stuff that we're engaging in, but there's a lot of danger, and it's getting worse as we look at it more and more and more. So I didn't want the stories to be all. I want some biblical principles, some biblical ideas that are really intended to guide us as we proceed and looking at social media and things like that. The first one I say is set clear intentions. If you're going to pick up your phone and look at it for 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, maybe 8 hours a week, 10 hours a week, think about why you're doing it. What is your purpose for picking up that device? Is it just a relief to just free your mind from the work that you're supposed to be engaged in? We all need that, right? But are you going to allow it to influence you? Are you going to notice those ads and be drawn to buy? Do you have Amazonitis because of all these things that you have seen on your social media accounts that you have to have? You have a real close relationship with the mail carrier. I know what that's like. I'm not judging. I understand. But we need to set very clear intentions with our social media. And if those kind of things are popping up, maybe we need to rethink what we're doing here. We need to evaluate ourselves. Why are we looking at this stuff? Everything that we do is supposed to be done in the name of the Lord. It's to be done to glorify God. It's not about us, right? If we're posting all the time and we're trying to not just, share with everybody what's going on in our lives, because like us, we live 4.5 hours away from family and people like that. So, we share stuff. Are we doing it for our own glory? What is our intention in this? We need to think about that and process that information and make sure that the heart is right in the posts that we're making. And we need to exercise discernment and make sure that we're using our time correctly. I love in Colossians, you have this picture, redeeming the time, for the days are evil. We need to take advantage of all the time that we have as best we can and use it for God's glory. We need to be thinking about, is this the right way to spend my time? If we're spending hours a day on social media and we're just constantly just absorbed with it, is that really a good use of our time? Is that really what God wants us to do with the little bit of time that we have here on this earth? And we need to be careful also not to be conformed to the world. The world is trying to bring us in and make us like them, and we need to be aware of that. And we're not supposed to be like them. And so we're actually supposed to see the influencer and say, that's wrong. You should not be doing that. And maybe choose a different one or something like that. There's millions of people out there who are influencers or whatever. But don't be conformed. Don't give in to their ways. Remember the will of God. Remember what God has called you to do. And if you're not studying and you're not using your time to remind yourself of the will of God, then the influence is going to be even stronger. And so maybe instead of picking up your phone to look at social media, maybe you pick it up to study His Word a little bit and be drawn closer to Him. I think that would be a better use of our time. Another one is we need to understand, I feel like this is something that I've been really learning as the COVID age and all that has happened, that we're supposed to be, the mission is people, right? We're supposed to be fostering meaningful connections with other people. And we're supposed to genuinely love other people. Abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. This is our purpose in this life. Connecting online, we're the most connected generation ever, but connecting online is not the same as connecting in person. It's just not. So we can't check the box of, I connected with people today because we liked their photo. It's just not the same. And those relationships are not going to grow and blossom and become what God really wants them to be online. We are supposed to be together. Love is supposed to be an involved process where we honor one another and we spend time with one another. We bless one another. We provide for one another. We're there for each other whenever we have needs in our life. And we need to be promoting in our use of social media what is true and what is honest. That needs to be our focus on social media. We're here not for, bringing up our own name, making a reputation for ourselves, but we're really here for bringing up God's name, making a reputation for Him. We're here to shine a light for others to see. Paul also said in Ephesians, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up. We're not trying to put a facade up on social media that life is great. We're not posting a bunch of things that we found on the internet as though it's true. We need to be like fact-checking and making sure that the things that we found are actually legitimate. And we need to be seeking to build one another up. This is a tool that we can use to build one another up. I've seen quite a few of you posting about other people and how great other people are. I mean, that's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, they're not bragging about themselves, but they're being bragged about. And what a platform that is, what a gift that is, that we can lift other people up and talk wonderfully about others and let their light be seen whenever they might have just done that in secret to receive no glory at all. And we can lift them up as wonderful examples for us. And finally, I will say this. Know when you have a problem. I've had a problem with social media, and maybe you have too. I've had the Amazonitis. I've had the endlessly scrolling and allowing it to be the focus of my life. And I love this verse for that. All things are lawful for me. There's nothing wrong with social media. It's not evil in and of itself. But not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. Social media is not your life. Life is about God. It's about living for God and serving Him every day. And so we need to get our heads up out of the phones and see the people around us, engage in meaningful relationships and conversations that bring people closer to God and closer to Christ. If your life is lived for God, then it should be about making a monument to glorify his name. And sometimes that means we tear down the towers that we've built to glorify our names. We allow people to see that we're broken people, but that God is so good and that he has provided the means of salvation for even a wicked sinner like me. And that's what we need to come to terms with in our lives. That it's not about us. It's not about me looking good and having a great reputation. It's really ultimately about God. And it's not about other people either. We need to fear missing out on God's mission for us more than we fear the disapproval of other people. God's mission is way more valuable. God's approval is way more valuable than the approval of all those people that you don't know, really, that you have not seen in years, and that maybe you don't even care about. It's not, don't make that the focus of your life. Instead, as you navigate through life, let your heart be wholly God's. Let him be your everything. And get past all the material world and all the influences that are all around you and just focus your life on him. Imagine that people today are reading the Bible less than they've ever read it. And I imagine people today are wasting more time than they've ever wasted. But don't let that be you. You're not here to waste your life away. You're very blessed. We're all very blessed with ease and comfort in many ways. But we have a purpose. And the purpose is to live for God and to glorify his name and to lift up other people, to serve him faithfully and to see that he has something different for us. I hope that this has helped you in some way. It was a very different sermon from ones that I've done in the past. I like to mix it up a little bit. There's going to be some different sermons as I go through this and try to work out how to preach more topically. I'm not a very topical preacher, so be patient with me. But I hope that this has helped you in some ways. You think about your relationship with social media. Maybe some of you are like, I never use social media, but all these people need to learn all this. Maybe you're somebody who's just like, it's me, I'm the guy. But whoever you are, realize that that's the world we live in today. And that there are dangers involved in it, but this is also a tool that we can use for God's glory. And let us do that, and let us devote our time to that. If you're here today and you've not yet submitted your life to Christ, then maybe none of this means much to you, but he is worthy of your submission. He's worthy of your life, to give him your heart fully, because he has offered his Son to provide forgiveness of all of your sins, to allow for you to enjoy the true spiritual blessings that are available to you for all eternity. And you can enjoy that. And that is so much more valuable than anything that you enjoy in this life. And if you're willing to submit your life to Christ today, all of those blessings can be yours. And we will help you to make the course corrections in your life if you're willing to submit to doing the will of God. That's what we're here for. And if you have any need, please let us know. Please come as we stand and as we sing.